Have you opened your Lorcana Sealed pool and been left with nothing but a pile of giant garbage? Well, this video's for you. Because at this weekend's Fabled pre-release event, that's exactly what I got. Let me show you how I turned this steaming pile of something into a 4-0 winning deck list. Welcome back, fellow Illumineers, to be our guest. I got a quick video for you today. For all of you that have ever opened a sealed pool with Disney's Lorcana and thought, what am I supposed to do with all of this midness? I've got a video for you. I cracked a sealed pool at this weekend's Fabled pre-release, and it was not impressive. But I made the most out of it that I could and ended up with a 4-0 winning deck list. So let me walk you through how we got there, how I sorted through the pool, and how I made it into something functional. Let's get into it. All right, so my approach when I'm starting to open a sealed pool is, first of all, I'm going to separate my playables from the cards that would generally be unplayable, your Ds and your Fs. That doesn't mean that I'm not going to be forced to put some Ds into that pool, and as you'll see in a moment, quite a lot of them, but I want to start with what are my playable cards. And once I sort through my playable cards, obviously I'm going to be eyeing for, okay, what's standing out as a bomb, and then going from there. Right? So as I sort through them, you'll see me sorting into two piles. From there, I will then sort it into the costs, and then proceed to see, okay, how is my ink curve going, and flesh out the rest of the deck with what's left. Now, I already know that I've put some cards in the playable pile that aren't going to make the final deck, and I'll tell you why in a little bit, but that doesn't mean that they're not cards that could have been viable to play. This is the first card that I've seen that I'm actually excited about. You can see there's a lot of cards going into that right pile. Ultimately, out of our sealed pool, we're going to have 6 packs of 12 cards, which means we're going to have 72 cards to make a 40-card deck, which means we at least need more than half in that left pile, and unfortunately that wasn't the case. I thought maybe I might have an Enchanted from the Gleam, but sadly it was just an epic, and one of the worst ones, if not the worst ones. I was excited to see Hades. Again, didn't end up making the deck, and you'll see why in a little bit. But yeah, we got an epic there, which was pretty great. I don't know about you all, but I'm really loving the new rarities. Obviously, I haven't seen an iconic in person yet, but just the epics alone give a new element that, as many have said it, bring a lot of excitement to the pack opening experience. So, all right, more for the left. PJ's fine, Donald Duck bad, Aurora not good at all. Prince Naveen perfectly fine. Tinkerbell perfectly fine. Again, you're seeing a lot of cards that are like fine, they're in the C's, but not a lot of A's here. Strength, obviously fantastic. Bruno, solid. Lots of fire the cannons we've seen so far. So we can see we've got a decent amount of removal. We got I think at this point, at least a couple fire the cannons. We got strength of a raging fire. So our removal's pretty good. I will give you that much for this deck. I kind of sold it as being a steaming pile of garbage. It's not necessarily that, but it's definitely not. It shouldn't have been a 4-0 deck. So we had 16 people in this sealed competition. So we did 4 rounds so that we could come to a conclusive winner. And I managed to go 4-0 in that time. I ended up going 8-1 in games. And I will say the game that I lost was very, very close. My opponent got quite a few good series of top decks in order to be able to take out the win. Unfortunately, I didn't record the gameplay. My overhead camera mount is broken, and plus it just makes for really long videos. And I thought, hey, let's just go through what it looks like building our sealed deck pool here. So we're getting into the last pack, I believe. And finally, we've got a very good card in Jasmine and in Hercules. That was definitely a saving pack. Oh, we got one more left here. But those are probably going to be the best top-end cards that you'll see from our deck. I am not very graceful with my pack openings. I will say also a good quantity of the 5-cost 5/5s, which proved to be very good. I've said this before. In Sealed, typically it plays out slower, which is to say it's really hard to curate an aggressive deck in Sealed. You take what you can get. In Draft, my opponents might not be valuing the aggressive cards very much, so I can evaluate them higher and build an aggressive deck. In Sealed, you take what you get. It's really hard to build an aggressive deck. So as a result, you don't get a lot of really impressive 1 and 2 drops. and the game tends to go a little bit longer as a result, which means you can take a risk on more high-end, top-end cards. So you can see here, I'm going to ultimately separate each cost into 2 piles. So I've already separated my playables from my relatively unplayables, not necessarily decisively unplayable, but relatively unplayable. And now I'm going to separate them again. I'm going to filter it down one more time to the cards that I'd actually be okay with playing versus the cards that ideally I would like to not have in my deck. So those like C minuses. You can see You Can Fly, that would be more of a D plus, but given what I'd seen in the pack, I ended up putting that in the playable pile. I don't know if that actually is the case, but all right. So we're separating it out here, and what you're going to see is that I've got a lot of 1s, 2s, 3s, and 4s, and not a lot beyond that. I know you can't see the 6 pluses here in the frame, but I'll bring those into frame a little bit. So a lot of 1s, 2s, 3s, and 4s. 3 Fire the Cannons. A lot of the 1-cost 2/2s. And you're going to see bigger piles of 2s, 3s, and 4s. So already at this point, seeing that I had very little top end and a lot of lower cost, I'm already thinking, okay, I might have to try. I just said it's really hard to curate an aggressive deck in Limited. This kind of pool makes it so I'm probably going to have to try. I realize I've got too many 2/2s in here, so I separate the best of my 1-drops. Improvise I've got in there just to try and filter my deck a little bit much, but I'm like, 4 of the 2/2s I probably don't want. So at that point, I separated out, well, I know I don't have any ally synergy. I have 1 whole villain synergy, so you'll see in a moment that I separate out the villains first. But going into the 2-drops here, I know already, and that's why I pull out the Enchantress right away, because I'm already seeing I'm probably going to have to have a more aggressive deck. So also you'll see that I'm going to nix the Robin Hood as a result, because if I'm going to go more aggressive, Robin Hood doesn't really complement that. Even Stitch doesn't really, but I ended up putting that in just because I needed more 2-drops. I cut the Rapunzel as a result, because it is more of a late game card. I cut Robin Hood as a result. You'll see Stitch goes in a little bit, but the other 2 I cut because they don't really complement an aggressive style. Again, I'm pulling out all the 2-questers here, all the evasives, definitely strength, right? Everything that's going to help me be more aggressive. So I make note here that is going to pair well with the 2 queens that I've got at 1-drops. It didn't end up working. I never got the extra war off, but in theory, that would have been a good kind of turn 1 and 3 play. Now, in our 3-drop review with David Nunez, you might remember that I identified Mother Knows Best as a card that I like to play, but David didn't like to play. And I said, I like to play it because I tend to play a little bit more tempo. Now, I was talking about draft where I could curate a little bit more, but knowing what I know about this pool and that I want to be more aggressive, Mother Knows Best is actually a great card for that. Not great, but a very playable card for that type of game, because it allows me to get rid of my opponent's biggest character with maybe something that I've already gotten value of, especially a 1 lore quester. So again, separate out all the 2 lores easily, all the evasives easily. The little tiny bit of card draw that I've got in the Tinkerbell Uninkable, you might have noticed up until this point, there's no card draw. We have Cusco at 2-drop, the 1/2 llama, and then we've got Tinkerbell at 4-drop, the Uninkable one. So we're very, very light on card draw right now. So all my 5-drops I like because they all quest for 2. Like, those are all great. Those 2 are easy. Hades, unfortunately, is not really complementary of an aggressive deck. I mentioned it before that I personally might try and play Hades in Sealed because it's usually slower, but this deck was not the Hades deck. I'm not getting to 7 very often with this deck. There's a distinct possibility that I stop at 4 or 5 ink, unless I happen to draw Hercules, right? Because really, I want to try and get as many of my cards on the board as possible. When I don't have card draw, I can't be just inking forever. I'm going to run out of gas. So I knew that I was going to need to stay low on ink, so Hades is not for this deck. Fantastic card for Sealed if you can pull it off, but it is not for this deck. So you can probably tell from this pool, we've got look at this family. We've got Tinkerbell, the 1/4 that searches the top 4 for a character, and we've got Cusco the llama. That is the only card draw in this whole pool, and that's what really keeps it down. The pool isn't terribly awful on other things, certainly removal. Again, 3 Fire the Cans, and 3 might have even been too much. If this was a more late game build, I would have cut down to maybe even 1 Fire the Cannons. But ultimately, because this is a deck that I knew needed to have early game, the 3 Fire the Cannons actually ended up being useful. There's a couple of times where it was stuck in my hand for a little bit, but there was very rarely a time where it wasn't useful, because my opponents are going to have bigger characters than mine, and I'm going to have to just quest out. And so my opponents are going to be left with characters with, 1 or 2 willpower on their 5/5 because they challenged into my 3/3, right? Into my Mickey Mouse true friend. So this is me kind of just looking over that last stack a little bit longer to see if there's anything else. You notice me pause on Family Fishing Pool here, and I'll look at Agrabah and things like that. So I'm taking another look at what I had discarded earlier through the lens of, okay, I know I need to go faster now. So is there changes that I want to make from this discard stack that might complement a more aggressive deck? Hans as well. I've got some I've got some queens and princesses in my deck, so that might help. And then I think that might have been the last one that I identified from the discard pile there. So there's some cards that might complement a more aggressive deck. As it was, I think I put Hans in, but that was about the only change that I made out of the discards. And that was just because it was a 2 Lore Quester at 3, and I had the 2 queens at 1 drop that I thought, okay, and this actually played out in one game. In one of the finals games, actually, when I went 2-0 in the 4th round, I played Queen turn 1, I played Hans turn 3, and got that extra lore before the Queen was removed off the board. So it ended up working out very well. How did this play out? Just as you'd expect. I had to, on the play, and I lost the die roll 3 times out of the 4 rounds. I had to just go all out quest when I was on the play. On the draw, what cards I had to control the board, I tended to prioritize those. You're going to see here I remove Alice, because although it quests for 3 or for 2, it gives a character minus strength on your turn only. And that is designed for bigger bodies that can then challenge more efficiently. I'm not challenging a lot, so this deck does not love Alice. So I cut Alice for Hans at that point to get a little bit lower still on my curve, and to not bother with the whole -2 strength. It wasn't really going to help me. Doesn't say I wasn't ever challenging, but that's not what my deck is best at. The other thing that was really important to my strategy for winning is I prioritized curve. So when I was mulliganing, I prioritized having 1 into 2 into 3 into 4 into 5 into 6 if I had Hercules. I had one game where I kept all 7 because I had a solid 1 through 6 and 1 extra that was inkable. And this is where a deck that curves out effectively can beat a stronger deck that stalls. If your opponent's got a stronger deck and they mulligan aggressively to look for those great cards and don't find them, and they're not curving out every single turn, and I had at least 3 games out of the 8 that I won where my opponent missed a turn effectively. They inked and didn't really have a play, or didn't have anything of significance to play that affected my board. So the fact that I kept curving out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, especially 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, made all the difference. I had a few games where I had to mulligan because I only had, 1, 2, and I was missing 3 and 4. Really, having 1, 2, 3 is the most important. So that game I mulligan 5. I kept 1 and 2 because I knew that I needed to try and hit my curve as much as possible. And I knew I had a density of 1 through 4, especially, that I should be able to draw those. And then hopefully by the time I get to turn 5, I've drawn a 5 drop. And every game I was able to curve out as a result. So if your your pool is suffering and your deck needs help, the 2 things that I can give you advice over, if anything else, is to see what your deck is best at. Like, what can your deck do well? And mulligan according to that strategy. which is to say, if your deck skews more aggressive, then go all in on that. If your deck's going to be later game, go all in on that. Because ultimately, trying to be mid-range and be able to pivot between the two when your pool is weaker and thinner just isn't going to work. You're going to do both things poorly. Whereas if I can at least beat you one of the ways and just try to make that work, then maybe I can make things happen, right? And for me, if I'm going to be on the weaker side, I'd rather be on the aggressive side of weak, but obviously it depends on what your pool is. So I hope that helps. I'm going to have another video tomorrow with building my draft deck. So I had a draft the night before, and I'll show you that draft and why I justify each pick to hopefully help you make your picks in any drafts, whether it's in this set or sets to come. Thank you very much. See you next time. Bye, everyone.